Hello, I'm Mary Ann Dalton, and welcome to Active Aging, a program devoted to exploring issues of importance to older people and people living with disabilities. Each month, we provide information and resources to help you live a healthy, satisfying, and independent life. This month, we'll speak with a local attorney about the unique legal challenges faced by older people. We'll also speak with a registered dietitian from Somerville Cambridge Elder Services about food safety for seniors. My first guest is attorney Alex Moschella from the law firm of Moschella and Winston in Somerville. Welcome to the program.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, well, to start off, why don't you tell us what makes elder law different from other areas of legal practice?
Well, it's an interesting question because it's become an emerging field, Mary Ann, in terms of a concentration that elder law attorneys are totally focused and committed on asset protection planning and long-term care planning for elders with government regulations, Medicaid, Medicare, all of the maze of these government programs. And we've kind of developed and emerged as a specialty kind of focus where we have a Massachusetts chapter of elder law attorneys that has over 700 attorneys, one of the largest in the country. But we're part of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. I've taught elder law at Suffolk Law School for 15 years now, where I went to law school. So there's a lot of interest in aging issues that are different from the typical traditional estate and tax planning issues that the general practitioner may deal with or the estate attorney.
Interesting. So, however, estate planning is a key element of elder law practice, and what are sort of the aspects that are the biggest concerns of estate planning that elders have?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. As I turned 60, we're part of the whole movement of 60 is the new 40 and 80 is the new 60. So in terms of the clients we see, we often are seeing clients that are 55 plus who are looking at just protecting their assets, estate planning. But as you age, we often will see 85 plus clients who have different needs than the 55 plus generation. And we look at, from the point of view of the 80 plus person, it's how do I protect my family home? It's been their blood, sweat, and tears. They want to pass it on to their kids. They want to age in place and die in the home oftentimes, maybe with supportive services as opposed to transitioning outside of the home. So they're concerned about the state putting a lien on the house. They're concerned about protecting it, passing it on, maybe using real estate trust, getting through these complicated look-back periods for all of these changes in the Medicaid rules.
Now, and I know I want to ask you a little bit more about that later, but first I know that there are a few simple things, in addition to, of course, we all know a will is a must-have, but people hear there are other documents that are important, such as a healthcare proxy. What is a healthcare proxy, and why is it how does it protect someone?
I would say that's probably the easiest, most consumer-friendly document to have that oftentimes goes by the boards and is misunderstood. Healthcare proxy would allow you or I to name someone to act for us if we were incapacitated or couldn't tell the doctor what we wanted for healthcare decision-making. Now that's critically important if there's multiple children or children out of state, particularly if there's a complex medical issue such as tube feeding, use of ventilators, do not resuscitate orders. It allows that person who's named as our agent to step in and make any and all decisions. Without that, many elders then are left like adrift at sea with not having anyone in the picture that the hospitals can call to deal with healthcare decision making. And you can only appoint one person. A lot of our clients will say, well, I don't want to upset my kids. And I'll say, well, you have to decide on the one who would know your views and understand what your feelings are. And you really have to talk to the agent about how do you feel about these things. And that's a difficult talk to have, but we all need to have it. How do you feel about all of these interventions?
Yes, and now the other document that I've heard is the durable power of attorney. What does that do?
That's different. The healthcare proxy is for medical decision making. The durable power of attorney is for financial, accessing bank accounts, paying bills, even transferring real estate. It's a very powerful document, very useful, but also can be very dangerous if you appoint the wrong person as your power of attorney who can go to the bank and access your funds.
Yeah, that seems like a big issue. But it's at the same time to maybe not have that as an older person, can put you also in peril.
Yes, so you can't, you have to make sure that the person you appoint is a trusted, valued person, one who is going to act in your best interest. And oftentimes, family members, they'll have sons, daughters, or nieces, nephews, grandchildren, but you have to make sure that person is not someone who themselves may financially exploit you, may be underemployed, or may have drug, alcohol problems, marital problems, where they would be the wrong choice to be named as the power of attorney.
So it sounds like it's probably an area where you really would want to seek legal counsel around, setting up these documents and being careful about your choices. And
most definitely, because I think oftentimes I can understand the public feels, well, I can go online or I can get these forms, but it misses the dynamic of talking to an experienced attorney about the options and the whole situation that may exist. The difference between joint accounts and different kinds of bank accounts can be looked at, how your estate is set up, how your property is held.
So, back to the whole issue of long-term care, paying for long-term care and protecting your assets. What are some of the specific strategies that you might advise a client to pursue in reaching those goals?
Well, I guess there's a basic matrix of things you look at in terms of this whole, the cost of nursing home care, as you know, in the greater Boston area is $10,000 a month. It's, it's a catastrophic cost. And unless you have long-term care insurance, which many elders cannot really afford or they may be uninsurable, you are either going to have to private pay or have your assets be at risk or figure out a way of how do you pay for that care or how could you protect your estate and your assets if you ever needed a nursing home. Or what about home health care? What about assisted living? But just talking about nursing home, because that's the big scare, I think, amongst elders, that they don't want to lose their independence, leave their home. The house can be transferred to a real estate trust. A life estate could be preserved for the elders so they can have the right to live there, could never be thrown out, never have the property mortgaged. That would trigger the new 5-year look-back period that was changed from 3. So you have to make it through 5 years of not going in the nursing home to be able to have your property and your assets protected. It's a long look-back period, a little bit of punitive, in my opinion, when they changed it from 3 to 5 in February of '06. But many elders want to do that. They want to be aggressive to kind of make sure these hard-earned assets are available and protected.
So it's all the more reason to really think about this really before you have to, when you think it's off in the distance. You can't be planning too early.
That's correct, because otherwise when it's a crisis, your choices are really limited.
Interesting. Now, are there any other resources you might suggest for someone who's starting to research estate planning, finding legal help?
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount of material that's out there through the aging organizations, as you know, with Cambridge Somerville Elder Services, the Council for Aging. I think some of the big issues are all of these healthcare choices with Medicare Part D. There's aid to dependent programs for veterans, surviving spouses of veterans. We have a lot of publications we put out on our website. The National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys has a website. The Massachusetts chapter is just accessing these services. But I think it's really trying to hook up with elder law attorneys that have really been out there doing a lot of this stuff and concentrating their practice. I mean, it's like the old school that, if you needed surgery or you needed some kind of a procedure, you want to go to a physician that's specialized in there or a professional. Like, we don't do criminal defense work or divorce work, domestic relations, or bankruptcy or immigration. The law is so complicated that you do want to go to someone that works in that particular field where you have the need.
Well, that's a great overview of I think the basic issues that people need to be concerned about. I know we'll be posting contact information at the end of the program for some of these resources that you've mentioned. And thank you for joining us.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for a meaningful way to give back to the Somerville community? Do you want to think globally and act locally? Do you crave great company, tasty food, and more than a few good laughs? If the answer is yes, consider joining the Somerville Rotary Club.
Rotary is a worldwide organization of business and professional leaders that provides humanitarian service, encourages high ethical standards in all vocations, and helps build goodwill and peace in the world. Over 1 million Rotarians in more than 200 countries respond to international needs through the Rotary International Foundation. Somerville Rotary responds to our neighborhood's needs through grants and volunteer service projects.
Last year, Somerville Rotary raised and distributed thousands of dollars to organizations serving our city.
Club members took part in projects serving youth, the homeless, community education, and the environment.
If you would like to give back to the community, the Somerville Rotary would like to hear from you.
Accione USA é uma organização sem fins lucrativos que, junto com a cidade de Somerville, oferece empréstimos para pequenos empresários, entre $500 e $25.000. Se você é um pequeno empresário e necessita de um empréstimo, contacte-nos, pois estaremos prontos a atendê-lo.
Acción USA es una organización sin fines de lucro que provee préstamos para microempresarios que no tienen acceso a capital por uno u otro motivo y que no pueden obtener financiamiento para su negocio, ya sea para expandirlo o para empezar su propio negocio. En Acción USA le podemos ayudar con préstamos que van de $500 a $25.000, $15.000 para negocios que van a empezar y hasta $25.000 para negocios que están establecidos. En estos momentos estamos haciendo una alianza con la ciudad de Somerville para traer estos programas de financiamiento para los pequeños negociantes y además proveer otras asistencias a nivel técnico que les va a ayudar a las personas a mejorar su negocio y el manejo de su capital. Por favor, contáctenos si tienen alguna pregunta o si está interesado en aplicar para un préstamo al 617-616-1579 o al 617-625-7080 extensión 1335 y pueden preguntar por Andrés Silva. Muchas gracias.
I'm here with Deb Mclean, registered dietitian from Somerville Cambridge Elder Service. She's also the director of the Community Meals Program there. And she's here today to talk with us about food safety. Now, Deb, food safety, we know it's important for all of us to be concerned about, but I know for older people, there are issues that they should be particularly concerned about. Can you describe why that is?
Oh, sure. We decided on this topic because of the weather. Yeah. It's getting warmer, and so it's something that we should think about more so because of the warm temperatures. But it's important because unsafe food caused an estimated 76 million illnesses and 5,000 deaths in the United States. And just in 2006, the CDC said there were 17,000 illnesses due to foodborne illness. So it's very important that we keep this in mind because it is such a major factor in the United States. It's important to think about seniors too because they're at a greater risk of foodborne illness because of certain factors. Their immune system isn't functioning at peak levels due to a variety of reasons, whether it's malnutrition, maybe they're not eating enough food or getting enough nutrients. Medications could be a factor that might compromise their immunity. Undergoing major surgery might compromise their immune system too. And then other factors could be there's a decrease in stomach acid, and stomach acid normally will help prevent bacteria from flourishing in the gut. It will help kill it. But if their stomach acid is decreased, this could be a risk.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Then another, I know, it's quite a few things when you think about it. The digestive process also slows down, so it allows more time for bacteria to linger in the gut and produce other bacteria. And some other factors is their taste acuity might lessen, so they might not be able to taste food if it's gone bad. They might not be able to smell food if it's spoiled. And if there's any decrease in eyesight, they might not be able to see if the food has mold on it.
Now, a lot of people confuse sort of other illnesses with foodborne illnesses. That's very common, as I understand.
Oh, the statement, oh, I've had the 24-hour flu. Most times it's foodborne illness. If you don't have any kind of respiratory problems associated with the flu, then most likely it is a touch of foodborne illness.
And so it's much more
It
common
has the
than
same
one would
symptoms.
assume,
It
yeah.
feels just like flu symptoms, and also associated would be diarrhea or maybe upset stomach.
So what are the major causes of foodborne illness?
Well, there's 3 causes. Not keeping food in the right temperature, cross-contamination, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and also poor personal hygiene. It's very important that these 3 steps are taken to prevent foodborne illness.
And so there are these causes of foodborne illness, but so really you need to start thinking about foodborne illness like right at the supermarket. Are there, so you're shopping, and what things should you be concerned about for potential, sources of?
Well, whenever you're dealing with food, always keep those 3 factors in mind. Keeping the food in the right temperature, avoid cross-contamination, and that is when microorganisms from one surface will pass on to another. And then personal hygiene, you have to keep that up. So when you're shopping and you're placing your food in the cart, you have to be aware that you don't want to keep your raw food close to food that you might not cook, because most of the bacteria is killed by cooking. But say if you picked up raw chicken and you put it next to cold cuts, or a salad that was already made up for you that you wouldn't wash when you got home, say if you went through a salad bar, you want to make sure that the raw chicken doesn't come anywhere near your food that's in your bag or on your cart. And then when you're going through the line, you have to be aware of what the bagger is doing too, because I've stopped the bagger from placing raw food in with food that wasn't going to be cooked many times. And I've even taken food back and asked for it to be replaced if I've gone home and felt that something was unsafe. So you have to be very aware. And then the other thing is to make sure that the food stays in the right temperature, so you want to get home as fast as possible.
Yeah, that was my
Don't
next
go
question.
visit a friend.
Yeah, so it's you have, how long do you really have getting home? And this applies also to probably food. Maybe you've gone to a restaurant and you're taking home a doggy bag, or your Meals on Wheels have been delivered and you left it on the table. How long do we have to get that food into the refrigerator or the freezer?
Well, you want to make sure it gets home as quickly as possible. And the temperature outside is a factor. If it's 20 degrees, then you wouldn't have to go home as fast. But on a day like today, where it's up to 70 degrees, you should get the food home within an hour.
Okay. And so then, you've got your food in the refrigerator. There are issues of storage, safe storage in the refrigerator in terms of where things are placed, and also how long they can be kept in the refrigerator. Can you address those issues?
When placing the food in the refrigerator, it's the same as your shopping cart. Make sure that the food stays separate. So if you have a tuna casserole on top, you want to make sure that the chicken is nowhere near it, so make sure all your raw meats are on the bottom. And this prevents an accidental dripping that might go into a food that won't be cooked, or if you didn't cook it at a high enough temperature to kill the bacteria. So put all your raw meats on the bottom and keep all your cooked foods up top. So it's the same as with the shopping cart.
And how long can you keep, leftovers, for example, or say you receive our home delivered meal service, and you get a meal on Monday and you decide not to eat it. How long can it stay?
Well, it's advised that if you cook something yourself from scratch, you can keep it in the refrigerator for 7 days. But if you're purchasing a food that's cooked by somebody else, whether it's home delivered meal, or if it's from one of the restaurants in the area, then I suggest maybe 3 to 4 days. I wouldn't keep it any longer than that. And I do have some temperatures for frozen foods. They recommend that you can keep casseroles, soups, and stews 2 to 3 months. Meat that's uncooked, the whole roast, you can keep that up to a year. And if it's uncooked and it's ground, you can keep it 3 to 4 months. And poultry, if it's a whole, like say turkey or whole chicken, you can keep that up to a year. And poultry uncooked parts, like say if it's just breast and legs, you can keep that up to 9 months.
And how about reheating food? I know that this sometimes, is important to kill the bacteria. How long do you need to reheat?
Well, reheating food is important, and I suggest, as a rule of thumb, that everybody get a thermometer instead of trying. It takes the guesswork out of if it's the right temperature. And you can purchase thermometers anywhere in supermarkets or even in drugstores. I've seen them hanging. And a lot of the thermometers today come with the range of what you're supposed to be using for each food item. But it is advised that when you reheat to 165 degrees. Now, a lot of seniors reheat in microwaves, and it's very important that if you're reheating that, say if you have a plate full of food, that the food is pretty much level on the plate. You're not having a point where the food is higher than the other side of the plate, because that would cause uneven reheating. And then if you're heating, say, a casserole or a soup, it's important to take it out and stir it so there's no cold spots. Stir it up and then put it in and leave it on for a little bit more. And then when you take the temperature, take it in various areas. Take it in the middle and also take it on the side to make sure it's at least 165 degrees.
And when you're cooking, from scratch, cross-contamination you talked about at the beginning of our interview. Can you address that?
I think this is a big problem because, as we were talking earlier, I wish we could color code bacteria so maybe it shows up purple, but because you don't see it, people forget that it's there. And so when preparing food on your counter, you have to be very aware that cross-contamination can happen, especially if you're dealing with raw food. If you're cutting up chicken or doing something with raw beef, you have to make sure that if you use the same cutting board, that it needs to be washed and sanitized with a bleach solution to kill the bacteria. At my house, I try to set up as many barriers against foodborne illness as I can. So I have a cotton board for meat that's red, and I have a cotton board for produce that's green. So that way I have two different cotton boards for two different food items. And also, when you're done with each task, if you're doing cutting up meat, make sure that you sterilize everything in the area before you go on to the next task.
And even some people who are quite careful around, meat don't realize that there can be bacteria in fruits and vegetables that you have to be concerned about too. And this recent scare with the cantaloupe recall, I think, was a great example.
Any food can be a hazard if it's not handled correctly. Now, cantaloupe, you wouldn't think that would be a problem because it's not considered it is now, but it wasn't years ago, a potentially hazardous food. But the crevices in the cantaloupe are a great environment to harbor bacteria that might have come from the fields. There's livestock roaming the fields, there's deer, there's birds, and, these things are hard to control. And so there happened to be salmonella that was on the cantaloupe. And it didn't propose a problem until the cantaloupe was cut. Now the bacteria from the cantaloupe is now in the inside, and so that's what the problem was. So it's very important that we remember to wash our fruits and vegetables because that also can have bacteria on it.
Interesting. So any final thoughts on food safety going into the spring?
Well, we can all keep food safe by remembering the key principles, and that's to keep food at the right temperature, prevent cross-contamination, and always practice good hand washing. Wash your hands as many times through the day as possible, and that will decrease the risk of getting sick.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Marianne.
Thanks for watching Active Aging. Join us next month when we'll bring you more strategies for aging well.